Good good evening, everyone. This is a PDR live stream coming. Let me see. Okay, coming to you guys at around midnight, actually, giving you guys an update of on the presidential election 2024 between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Um, Please like the live stream. Probably no one's up, but we'll have this archived. So this is how the race stands at the moment. And it's really an outcome that was not really expected by some analysts. Even the so-called political science guru Alan Lichtman who supposedly has 100% accuracy rate, which I contested during previous live streams. I had doubts. I was going to do follow-up live streams on his work because I did take a look at his work and I did see some flaws in the thinking, and he's a very astute, learned academic, and he has since 1984 had predicted almost every presidential election accurately except 2000, where he had predicted Al Gore winning the election. And of course, that was a contested election that was very controversial. And many people, like myself, argue that it was actually stolen. Um, but the other problem with his uh, analysis was that I believe he had the 2016 election prediction where Trump came out on top, but yet Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. So he had predicted in this election that Kamala Harris would win because of his 12 keys, and that she basically, I think he had predicted that she had 8 keys in her favor. Um, I myself, by the way, did not believe that that this would what transpired tonight would actually transpire. Now the election has not been called, but it is very at the moment it is just becoming very hard to see Kamala Harris sweeping the board. Okay, so I'll talk more about Alan Lichtman. I did catch a little bit of his live stream, and with him and his son, and he just dumbfounded and just very quiet. The scene at the Kamala Harris campaign watch party was also pretty much. It was a very. They seemed very hopeful in the beginning, but as the night progressed, it was just like doom and gloom. And she didn't even come out tonight to address her supporters, which I think she should have. And that's some one bad thing. I mean, if your supporters are out there, you should at least have the decency to come out and say a few words to your supporters. Even Richard Nixon, when he lost in 1960, came out and spoke to his supporters. He didn't concede the night of the election, but he at least spoke to his supporters. Uh, so I think it's just not very professional, and not very. It's almost rude, I think, for your supporters to be out there and you don't show up, regardless of the outcome of the race. Trump just concluded his remarks. And again, the race as it stands, this is how the race stands at the moment. We have Donald Trump now in the red states, the dark red states are all states that have been called by the Associated Press. So at the moment, Donald Trump has 267 electoral votes, uh, um, won, and Kamala Harris has 224 electoral votes uh, on her column. Okay, now the states in light blue, like the state of Maine, just a couple of more. Like the state of Maine has 2 districts that have already reported. I think it's District 1 and 2. So they one went for Trump, and the other one is gone for Harris. So those two have reported. There's still two outstanding counties in Maine that are most likely going to go for Kamala Harris. So that's the on the win column for Harris is of course the Washington D.C., Maryland. God, I'm really bad with this. So Maryland would be God. So that would be Virginia. Maryland would be right there, and then New Jersey, New York, of course, was called early. Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, the state of Vermont, New Hampshire. New Hampshire was called kind of a little bit late than usual, which was kind of surprising that Trump did that well in New Hampshire. And then also Virginia was called pretty late. I saw in 2016 that things were really not going well with Hillary Clinton. I had been tutoring at the time, a student, and I had just finished tutoring, and the students' parents had I think it was CNN, yeah, they had CNN on, and it showed that Trump was ahead in Virginia. It was still too close to call, but I remember telling the father of the student at the time who I was tutoring that regardless of what happens in Virginia, that's not a good sign for Democrats. And we saw that today in Virginia, where it was kind of going back and forth. Uh, uh, so the other state that is on the Harris column would be Illinois, Minnesota, and then that's another state, Minnesota, today that was where Trump was actually leading for some time. So that was not a good sign for the Harris campaign. And of course, Colorado, New Mexico, and then California, and then the state of Washington had called they were the first two states out west that were called for Harris, and then later Oregon, and finally over here Hawaii's 4 electoral votes, and of course Alaska's 3 electoral votes are going to go to Trump for sure. They have not been called yet, but and that actually we don't even need to. They don't even need to do anymore. Yeah, so I mean the election's over practically, because even if Harris sweeps the board, I didn't even realize it until right now. Even if she sweeps the board here in Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada, which is unlikely that that's going to happen, and I'll explain why. Alaska would give Trump 270 votes. So, and Alaska's not going a Democrat. That's just not going to happen. So, and so I think that that's why the campaigns did what they did tonight. That's why we didn't see Kamala Harris speak to her supporters, and Trump came out. They probably have internal polling, and they saw the writing on the wall. And by writing on the wall, this is what I mean. Let's see here if I can find it right over here. Okay, so these were in Pennsylvania that had not been called because of these counties over here. So if we look at this state of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia County had actually about 60% reporting or 70% reporting. So these counties over here were in blue. They had not yet, they had over half of uh their returns reported already, but not 70%. So that's why the race was not called. And in these areas, these red areas, probably the rural areas of Pennsylvania, you had like a 90%, 98% reporting. And so that's why the Associated Press was not really calling it. But as the night progressed, and you see the numbers right now, this is like 96% reporting. Kamala Harris she has a big lead, 78.5%. So as the night is progressing, there's just not enough votes for Kamala Harris here to defeat Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. Okay, and then you have even at Pittsburgh County. So this is where the Democratic base uh, focus a lot of their support. One main takeaway tonight is that it seemed like Harris underperformed Biden's numbers. And I kind of hate to say that she underperformed because part of me thinks that it's not really her fault. It's more the Democratic Party's fault. Uh, because of this, the entire situation, you have to look at this through the entire context and the hand that she was dealt with. She really couldn't really do much on the campaign trail because she's not the president. And I had always advocated for Biden to resign and have her assume the presidency. Uh, this election today was very reminiscent of 1968, where Hubert Humphrey ran and lost, and he ran and he lost in a very close race. And the issue then was the Vietnam War, and voters punished the Democratic Party because they felt that the Vietnam War was being mishandled by the Democrats. The voters were not against the war. Okay, that came later in the 70s. But in 68, they punished the Democrats because the war was dragging on for too long. And Johnson kept telling the public there's light at the end of the tunnel. Um, we're going to win, period. And so the press kept calling him out and saying that he had a credibility gap. The press back then would not dare accuse a president of being a liar. So they used terms like he had a credibility gap. So the public saw that, and you know, also Walter Cronkite doing an op-ed in the CBS News saying that coming out and saying that the U.S. should have a different policy towards the Vietnam War. That he had changed his mind about how he felt about the Vietnam War. So it's a 68 was very reminiscent to what's happening today, where you have the situation in Ukraine and Gaza, where we don't have U.S. troops over there, but the American public is seeing that there's just chaos in that part of the world. And for those of you who think that, well, what does that have to do with us? Well, we're practically funding these wars, right? That's what happened during this administration, that they kept sending money over there. Uh, and the public sees that. So there was a sector of the public that was anti-war. And there was another sector that's not anti-war, but they just see that there's no end in sight, right? And it seems like we keep dumping money in these overseas uh problems, and we're not seeing anything good come out of it. Okay. Now, what a Trump presidency would do in those two, it's hard to tell, because Trump says one thing and then he does the opposite the next, or it seems like he doesn't really know what he's going to do. So it's hard to tell. But it seems that's one problem that Democrats had faced. And so Kamala Harris, really, what could she do when she's not really the president? That she can't really move foreign policy in that direction. And if can she really call out the president? If she had called out the president and said, "Oh, I believe it's a genocide and we should change the situation in Israel," then that would have opened up the floodgates. That would have opened up. She would have been questioned. Well, why didn't you resign if you feel that way, right? It just would have opened up a lot of uncomfortable questions for her. So there's just not much that I think she could have done. I don't think she feels probably. I think she feels bad for what's going on over there in Gaza, but I don't really think she cares that much about that situation. It doesn't seem like she's that well versed in that part of the world. So the other thing too is her experience, her lack of experience. She was only in the Senate for 4 years, and then she is gets called to be Biden's running mate, and then after 3 years, he has a meltdown on the debate stage, and then she's asked to come in, and so we're changing quarterbacks in the third quarter of the game. Very difficult to kind of pull out a victory. Yet, if you look at the polling, he was doing much more horrible, and yet she was able to close the gap and make up a lot of the difference. So, in essence, the case could be made that had Biden stayed in the race, this tonight would have been a worse beating for Democrats. I'm almost certain it would have been way worse because we saw the polling and it looked like this year the polling on the Real Clear Politics polling was actually accurate for a change in this election and probably still undercounted uh, the Trump support. The other thing too is that it seems that Trump has overperformed in rural areas, and that's what one of the Democratic strategists and um, said on one of the mainstream media networks that he thinks that the Democrats need to focus now more on rural areas, that they're taking the rural America for granted. And I think that's probably right because if the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, the first one, and Trump, he was at a rally in a rural area in Pennsylvania. Um, so, yeah, the Democrats really need to just rethink their strategy. The other thing that's not really being talked about too is the primary schedule that Biden did. I think probably had an effect because they could have won Iowa. And what they did in the primary season this year is that in the past, Iowa was the first contest. They decided to completely change the calendar and have South Carolina go first. Um, and then Iowa they didn't count the Iowa refused to change their caucus, and I think also New Hampshire as well. They refused to move their caucus or a primary to a later date because by state law they're supposed to go first. So the question now remains is that was that decision that Biden did, that the Biden camp did that cost the Democrats those electoral votes in the state of Iowa? And could it all have almost cost them New Hampshire? Because the numbers in New Hampshire were not that good uh, tonight. Um, so yeah, and Iowa is a very rural area. So any campaigning that they could have done during the primary, it would have been free media for the Democratic Party. The party would have been there on the ground. And of course, Iowa, like we said before, the state of Iowa is located in a very strategic location. If you look at the map right there, right there's Iowa. Okay, so it's located borders three of the swing states. Well, not really three of the. So the Illinois tonight was not really a swing state. Really, is two of the swing states. It borders Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. So we talked about earlier how in the previous elections, the states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, um, they vote almost the same in these elections. And let me look it up here. Um, so we see, I'm going to show you here the map in 2016. So we have here 2016. There's the state of Minnesota went blue for Hillary Clinton. All right. Then Wisconsin went for Trump, and Michigan went for Trump, and Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all red in 2016. Now we look at 2020, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all blue. They vote. They're voting. What we're seeing a pattern here is that they're all voting the same. You're not seeing here in these two elections a situation where Wisconsin's voting blue, but Michigan's going red and Pennsylvania's going red, or Pennsylvania's going blue and Michigan and Wisconsin are going red. We're not seeing that. They're voting in uniform. Okay. Right there. So, yeah. And what we're seeing here too in the Southwest is that it looks like Trump might be because Trump had in 2016 Arizona and it looks like he might be picking up, flipping Arizona back to his column. But the other state too is, Nevada has been going blue all this time. It's been going Democrat. So it's not really a good sign when you're seeing this going on tonight in the state of Nevada, where we're seeing Trump ahead by 54,000 votes with 81% of precincts counted already. So that's not a good sign at all that's happening. So, and some of us who were activists had campaigned in 2016 in Nevada and Arizona for Bernie Sanders, uh, and these are states that should be going blue. And there's not much that activists can do if the party's deciding not to focus on issues that affect working class people or people who are hurting economically, when the party decides to just abandon them or neglect them or not really focus on them. Um, this, what you see, the result is what you see tonight, um, there. So yeah, that's where we are at the race. And if we look here in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, this is why I'm saying that it's not looking really good, because Trump at the moment he has a 100 over 120,000 vote lead with 92% of the precincts counted in Wisconsin. And in Michigan, I mean, he has a big lead. He has over 310,000 vote lead with 78%. There's 22% more. I guess anything can happen. But like I said, look, Pennsylvania has been called. These three states have in the recent past have voted the same. Okay, they voted for one, either all gone Republican or all who've gone Democrat. Okay, so that's why these three states were key tonight. Okay, right. And so where do we go from here? Well, I mean, there's not much. I would suggest to the Democratic Party. I mean, they're not going to listen to me, but well, by the way, the light blue. Well, the possible result could be that Trump might get 312 if these light red areas do turn dark red. We know Alaska is going to go for Trump. So it might turn out to be that Trump wins by 312 electoral votes and Kamala Harris gets 226. So that might be the final result. So what's going to happen? What should the Democratic Party do? So they're not going to listen to me. So what they should do, of course, in 2028 is that they should have an open primary, and they need to bring back the calendar that they had before. So the calendar that they did for Biden, they tailor made for Biden so that he could win the nomination. They need to scrap that. Uh, Practically, I might be wrong, okay, but I think Kamala Harris's political future is over. They are, sadly for her, I don't think the party is going to put her into any important decision making or top of any presidential ticket in the future, because it's just they're not. I don't think they're going to risk it again. So Tim Walz, would he be a potential candidate in 2028, or who do progressives put forward? And that's the question for the people on the left: is who are progressives going to put forward in 2028? Okay, so they do have quite some candidates there but I don't see anybody who has a national appeal. The person who does have national appeal would be Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, but I don't even see her winning a Senate seat, U.S. Senate seat in New York, because he's just become a very divisive kind of a firebrand. And I think the path that she has decided to take after her first year in Congress, I don't think it's really suited her well for a national audience. She's just become almost a lightning rod um, for the identity politics side of the Democratic Party. So I'm not going to talk more about that. But she's a possibility. Um, Honestly, for the progressives, there's just at the moment, who is the person who can catch that steam and momentum that Bernie Sanders captured in 2016, and then later in 20, and so and build it to 2020. I just don't see anyone at the moment. The Tim Walz, it's going to be hard to see what's going to happen to him after this one. You know, he goes back to Minnesota as a governor, and are they going to? Is this race going to help him be one of the top contenders in 2028? Could be, but whatever they decide to do is the Democratic Party, they or the base, the activists, they have to force the Democratic Party to listen to the base because they're not listening to the base, and we see it in the Gaza genocide issue. And the mainstream Democratic voters have basically told the the pro-Palestine activist in the Democratic Party or maybe outside the Democratic Party to basically hold their nose, vote for Harris, and then hope that things might change a little bit. Or if they don't ensure a Harris victory, things will get worse under Trump. And it's just not that's not a winning argument. It's not even a convincing argument. And why would you tell those people would not want someone to tell them that if their family were suffering a Holocaust, they wouldn't want somebody to come and tell them, oh, but you need to vote for this candidate who's a part of this Holocaust. Because if you vote for the other side, they're going to do a worse Holocaust. It's just an insane. Um, it's just an insane argument. That doesn't work, and you see the results tonight. That's just that part of that electorate that decided either to stay home or vote a third party. And by the way, they can't even blame the. We're looking at the results of the third party, and I think that Jill Stein is not even hitting 1%. And in these swing states, the vote that went to Stein is not even if all those votes went to Harris, it would still not put Harris over the top. So yeah, so they have the I think it's really up to the activists to try to pressure the Democratic Party and not to be bullied by the Democratic Party to get in line. I think that that was the other mistake that they made is that when they announced that they decided not to hold a open convention, and once it was announced that they were supporting Harris, everyone was expected to fall in line, and that was a big mistake. And even the unions too, they made a big mistake in immediately endorsing her when they should have pressured her on issues, you know. And it's possible that she probably would not have won, but again, I think if we look at the polling where she came from and where it's at now, she actually did make up a lot of the difference. Where when Biden had the meltdown in the debate, he was really behind in a lot of the polling. Um, and then we saw a surge with her, but I think at the end it was just not enough uh, for her. So, what's going to happen under a Trump presidency? Who knows? We'll just wait and see. The Senate will go Republican, but we're waiting to see what's going to happen in the House, whether the Democrats will flip control of the House. So that could be a silver lining tonight. Well, thank you so much for. Well, it's just getting late here, but thank you so much for watching, and please like the live stream for those of you who catch this, and then take care. We'll see you soon.